much as I don't want to interrupt the In the Heights soundtrack, it's time to get started. Hello, everyone. I am Francisco Mendoza. The pronouns are he, him, and I'm the marketing manager at the Play at Rome. And I just want to go through some logistics before we get started today. So the first thing is we are humans at our houses, zooming in. So, you know, eventually one of us may need to turn off their camera and handle something that's happening. And I just want to establish the dynamic and make the panelists comfortable. If you have a question for us as we go along, please submit it to the Q&A. Depending on what the question is, we'll tackle it before it even gets to the discussion. But if there's time at the end and there are questions that haven't been answered, we'll do our best to answer them, me or any other of the panelists. Also, if you need captions, we have turned that option on, so please find it in your menu and turn it on. If you are incurring in any caregiver costs to attend the webinar, there will be a link in our follow-up email allowing you to request a reimbursement, so be on the lookout for that. Going a little bit through our values, the Realm seeks to be an equitable, inclusive, anti-oppressive, and anti-racist organization. More information on our mission and values is available on our website, which my assistant Jenna in this chat it's gonna pop in the chat. Those values extend to this virtual space, so if at any time you feel you experience something that is not in alignment with those values, please feel free to chat us or follow up via email, and we're dropping that email in the chat as well. I want to do also a quick land acknowledgement. I am joining you today from the traditional unceded territories of the Lenape and Canarsie people. I offer recognition and respect and acknowledge that colonization is an ongoing process that continues to impact the lives and lands of Native communities. I want to acknowledge that in addition to the physical land we occupy today, the platforms, technology, and equipment that we are using consume resources that are based in physical lands and are not universally accessible to all peoples and communities. We're also sharing a link for those who would like to learn more about the spaces we occupy, and I invite you to take a moment to name the land that you're occupying on the chat if you so wish. And now I'm going to invite the other panelists to turn on their cameras so we can go around and introduce yourselves. And when we do so, please share your name, your pronouns, and I'm curious. Well, I'm not curious, I know, but our audience is probably curious about where you're from and where you currently are. So starting that, I am from Argentina. I was born and raised in Argentina, grew up in Brazil. My family moved there when I was 12, and then I moved here at 25, and I am currently in Brooklyn, New York, as I said, in my land acknowledgement. And I'm gonna pass it on to Alexandra.
Hi, I'm Alexandra Alex, she, her, hers. I'm from El Salvador, and I am here. I've been here since October. I'm gonna pass it on to Cha.
Hi, my name is Cha, she, her, lighting designer from the land of Lenape, originally from Manila, Philippines. And there's some people in my background, and today's gonna be great. Thank you for having me.
I am gonna toss it on to Danilo.
Was it me? I didn't hear. Oh, sorry. It's just like literally a truck just went by. So hi, I'm Danilo Gambini. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am originally from São Paulo, Brazil. Moved here 4 years ago. I'm currently in New Haven, moving to New York next week. And I am a director. I'll pass it to Omar.
Hi, my name is Omar. I am a lighting designer from Cairo, Egypt. I am zooming in today from Los Angeles, and I use pronouns he, him, his. And I'm gonna pass it to Jeton.
Yeah, hello, I'm Jeton Neziraj from Pristina, Kosovo. So I'm at the moment in Pristina, Kosovo.
With quite the time difference, I should say also. But
exactly, it's yeah, now it's 10 p.m.
Well, thank you for for joining us regardless. Okay, so actually just going around made me also feel like it'd be great to learn a little bit about your journey on the way to the International Theatermakers Award. As anyone who is joining us today probably knows, because that was the intent of this panel. The 5 of you were the winners of our first edition of the International Theatermakers Award, which means the Playotron, in association with Dyer Harris, covered your fees to apply for an artist visa. So I'm curious to know a little bit more about how you got started in theater making, and how you ended up coming or are planning to, depending on your visa status, to the US to work. I'm gonna let this one be a volunteer one. So who wants to jump in and tell us a little bit more about your career? And if you take too long, I'm gonna choose someone. So
I can start. But first of all, I think on behalf of everyone here right now, thank you so much, Playwrights Realm, for having this ITA awards, because a lot of the people don't know that it's a lot of money. It is a lot of money to be able to be here, and it is a lot of money just for all of the things that you need to address in terms of your paperwork for whatever status you have. But in our case, it's O1 visa. And I just really want to thank you guys for making this happen. And going back to your question, my experience, I came here in the US 2014 for grad school in NYU. So it was a journey of like from student visa going into my visa right now, which is the name of the webinar, is Extraordinary Alien. We're all extraordinary. So 3 years of in grad school, and then, should I say this, like OPT, and then after OPT it's O1, and then recent, because it was just like the stars just aligned when the application opened up, because I needed to renew my O1 because it's only for 3 years. I don't know though if it's like a country thing, but in the Philippines, if it's an O1 thing, it can only last for 3 years. So
that's just how it is.
Right. So then as a lighting designer, I think it goes for everyone, but it's really challenging in a lot of ways, because you have to keep on working, and it was extra harder, especially after grad school, because I mean, who knows me? No one knows me. Who's gonna hire me? Like, and then part of the application is that you have to be extraordinary. But at the end of the day, for me, I was telling April, the lawyer, I just want to be ordinary. Like I'm not extraordinary. I'm just an ordinary person. Like, because it's so hard to, it puts you in a pressure. It puts you in a position where you're always just like, I'm documenting everything, every show. Like, I'm organizing my resume, that I have to be on top of everything, because I know after 3 years I need to renew my O1, and I need to show the government that, hey, look, I'm extraordinary, and it's just also the O1 visa is so broad in structure. I don't think that it's really applicable to specifically lighting design, or like directing or like set design, because I like in the requirements I have to be able to win awards. But it's one of those things where I'm like, it's so hard to have a Tony Award after grad school, or like to have a Pulitzer after grad school. So how are we gonna address those concerns, and how are we gonna move forward? And I think that's where Dyer Harris comes in. They really help you on how to navigate because each O1 case is special, and I say special because it's unique to all of our experiences. And yeah, so far that's been my experience, and it was a lot, especially during the pandemic. And yeah, so I hope I answered your question.
You did. And I have a feeling most of us are going to have, to some degree, the same question. Just to clarify something that you said, Cha, for anyone who doesn't know, when you come to the United States on a student visa, built into that visa is a period of time where you can work, and it's considered part of your education. That's the optical practical training, or OPT. So it's normal for people who are students to have that extra year. If they haven't used it throughout their education, they will use it after. And that's, as it was your case and also was mine, that was a time where I was trying to build up
Right.
a body of evidence to prove that I was extraordinary in order to apply for
That's right.
Danilo, I imagine that's your case too, just from knowing you personally, that was also the case.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit to my experience too, because there are some specificities of like the director's trajectory. That for us, my BFA is in film directing, so from University of São Paulo. And then I also at University of São Paulo went to the acting training and the School of Dramatic Arts, which is like an important school in Brazil for actors. And right after that, I had like a career of like 7 to 8 years directing, and then directing musicals, opera, and I had also my theater group as an actor, and also like directing theater here and there, like straight plays too. So I had like somewhat long career before I came here to the United States in 2017, also for my grad program in directing at Yale. And it's so funny because I was here when I came for the callbacks, and then I got accepted. I was in a friend's house, and when I got accepted, she was like, okay, you have to pay attention to this. 2 things: save all press, everything that's written about you, first thing. Second thing, build your credit score. Like literally 10 minutes after I got accepted, she immediately got anxious for me. She's also Brazilian. She was getting her credit card. So her credit card, her green card. I should have got my credit card back then, which I didn't. And only now I realized what a bad idea it was. But, you know, like it was so interesting how like this, like there's a shared experience of this immigration anxiety, because it's something that is just like only who goes through this understand how all things that this entails, right? So for the specificity of the director's career is that there is this moment that you are the emergent director. So like the emergent director is the director that hasn't had a big production either in like an off-Broadway or in a big regional theater, right? Which is actually like a huge deal. But before that, like you're mostly making your living out of being assistant or just doing whichever other jobs in theater that you can find. But for you to be an extraordinary alien, you have to have those credits, right? And credits inside school don't count. And credits, you know, as an assistant director don't count. So it's a very complicated thing. And I am now 35 and I've been an emergent director for 15 years now, which is something that is very interesting. And like now I was in Brazil and I had crossed that in Brazil and then here like backtracked and now like crossing it again. So it is another thing that I discovered while doing it is that everything that you do inside school doesn't matter. It's like it doesn't matter, which actually for me was like 3 years of like amazing personal and artistic and professional growth. And no, you're a student, so you're not extraordinary by being a student. So this was something like all those things that you learn about like becoming an immigrant, right? Like, and then for me specifically, I graduated into the pandemic. So it was, okay, so what the fuck do I do in this like online year, theaters shut down, to prove that like I'm working? So like there were like many incredible things that happened to me and like so many incredible people that gave me opportunities. One of them was like I am the directing fellow at Rattlestick, which was literally saved my life and became an artistic home and became a family and giving me opportunities to again cross that bridge. So like directing a production in August now in the main stage, which is the gift of a lifetime for me right now. But it was like the moment where like things shut down, it was just like a good month there of complete desperation. I was just like, okay, so what do I do? How do I stay here? How do I survive? How do I make money? But also how do I prove that I'm okay, so that I'm worthy to stay in the United States in the face of immigration, which is something that is a very very complicated place to be, that you think you have to prove that you are like worthy of staying here. So yeah, I think that's all I get.
Which I always joke, if the industry was put through the pace that we are put through in order to stay, most people have to leave the country, but here we are. And I think specifically through the pandemic, there was a challenge, and I'm thinking about designers, which, you know, more so than playwrights and directors, I think there was an extra fear. So Omar or Alexandra, I'm curious to hear from your experience trying to design in a Zoom world in that moment.
Yeah, Alexandra, do you want to start or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really stressful, obviously. And I mean, it's part of the reason why I'm in El Salvador right now. This is my second O1 visa. I just got approved. Thank you. But so mine ended in November. And so, you know, from like March to June, it was just terrifying. It was just trying to survive. I didn't do any Zoom stuff until I got here, actually. It was more like friends trying to see like, hey, can you, because I work a lot in dance. So they were like, can you like mock up some projections in Photoshop for us? But it was like non-realized stuff. It's like, yeah, I haven't done Photoshop since college. I'm down. I didn't do any, yeah, like I said, I didn't do any Zoom. It was just good friends trying to find things that were like semi-related to the field.
And how did that, well, I guess you said you did your application in November, right? So you still had.
No. Oh. No, so my process was a little more complicated, I guess. It was my second application, but I wanted to do a green card this time. Because so I actually got my O1 out of college. I haven't gone to grad school. And it was the same like stress. Like I moved to the city, and it was also a Brazilian friend who had graduated a year before me. She was in jewelry, so nothing to do with theater, but she was like, hey, like, this is what I'm having to go through. This is what we've all gone through. So this is what you need to do. And like, honestly, thanks to her, I'm pretty sure she's watching. Thanks to her, I had that whole year of like, just numbing my whole person and just working towards what I needed to do to get the visa. And I got super lucky because as soon as I moved to the city, this dance company, I guess someone recommended me. They were like, I haven't seen her artistic work, but I like working with her, so you should interview her. So I got super, super lucky. And someone before had actually told me like, they're like, what do you want to do? I was like, probably dance. They're like, okay, find a dance company and just marry them. And that's honestly what I did. That whole first year, that was my life, like the ballet. And yeah, that's how I got that first visa. But then what both Chad and Danilo are talking about of like, once you get it, it's like this enormous like psychological pressure of like, how am I an extraordinary person who deserves to be here? Like you can't just work. And it's like, you know, I was very young, I'm still pretty young, but it's the process of designing is also like you start assisting, and I haven't assisted. And so now in my head, it's like, oh my God, like I just skipped this whole step. Am I good enough? That whole thing that just like eats into you because you're trying to be like extraordinary all the time. You can't just like do your work and do a good job and enjoy it. You just have to like keep it always in the back of your head. Like, can I take this job? Will this count? If it doesn't count, will it maybe like pay for another job that will count? Like that sort of thing. You're always sort of taking maybe smaller jobs because you're the lead versus like bigger jobs where you're the assistant. So for me, it definitely has just like shaped my entire career, and I can't wait to not have to do that and just like take whatever I want. But yeah, for the pandemic, I had a lot of help first from my parents. They helped me just like pay for my apartment for 3 months. Then I left it. Then I like, my good friends just like housed me. Chad with like her amazing Sea Lighting Foundation also like kept me afloat. Oh my God. And then by September, I was like, this is just unsustainable. And I just bought a ticket and I came home. So, and I'm trying to be back in a month. So that's my
We
spiel.
will be waiting with open arms. To clarify something that you said also for whoever's watching, there is an equivalent of the visa that we're all here in, that's a green card. So it's also a green card for extraordinary abilities. Of course, the sort of metric that is used to measure that is much higher. But yeah, eventually I myself would see myself transitioning to that. It does set, like you said, it does set a sort of weird clock once you get your visa, because it's those 3 years, and it does feel, I am also on my second O1. And I have to say, when I applied for it the second time, there was a feeling of like, well, I wasn't extraordinary enough to keep, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna have to apply a second time. I wasn't extraordinary enough to go into the green card. And it's such a weird rule to have in your brain to judge your work by. It's like, I hear you on the, like, I wish sometimes I just was like working. It wasn't this specific pressure. Omar, did you wanna go as well?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to echo what Charles said about like thanking the Playwrights Realm for this amazing grant that you guys put together with Dyer Harris. And yeah, so similar to Danilo, I graduated in the pandemic, during the pandemic. So before graduation, I came to the US in 2017 to do my master's, and then during the pandemic, during my school time, I was building a network in New York, trying to talk to designers and directors, because I was hoping to do my OPT in New York, and then the pandemic hit, and New York was such a red zone in May 2020 when I graduated, and everyone was leaving New York, and of course rent is more expensive, and I was lucky that on my third year of grad school, I was living in a house where I was paying very, very little rent, and I was like, it doesn't make sense. Like I cannot afford to leave that house. I actually cannot even afford to go anywhere else in Los Angeles. So I just like had to stay where I was, and similar to Alexandra. She put together this amazing grant that was helping all of us at the beginning of the pandemic, and counting my blessings, eventually I found a job at a museum here as a technician. And to answer your question, Francisco, there was no design work. Like for me, I was the museum's lighting technician, so it's an administrative and technical job, but there's no design work per se that comes with it. And it's that question of, you know, like, how do I present my case to the immigration office with the help of Dyer Harris, of course, when during my year of OPT, I did like one small project with the Movement Theater Company, which I was a co-curator for, and then like did one small dance show in a park in LA with like 8 battery powered lights. And, you know, just like, how do you present your case when you are saying I am a designer? And it has been stressful, again, counting my blessings for being able to have a job at one point during the pandemic, and then getting that grant from the Playwrights Realm. It was like, okay, there is something that I can apply with, but it's a tricky and stressful process, and I just learned last week that my case got approved. So luckily I'm here, but yeah, it's like also like, how do we move forward from this? And after, now that theaters are starting to open, like, do we go back to where we were? And there have been multiple conversations, of course, during the pandemic about what changes need to happen. How can the live performance scene be sustainable financially, and when it comes to the administrative work and bureaucratic work that goes with visas and whatnot. So
yeah, it's what you're saying is reminding me, because there was a specific situation that was happening during the pandemic, and I think specifically for O1 people, right? The O1 visa is not a an unrestricted visa, you are authorized to work in your field. So it put us in a situation where if you lose jobs or gigs that have to do with theater, it's not like you can then switch and be like, well, I'm gonna Starbucks for a while. That's not really a possibility. And at the time, if I understand correctly, this is no longer the case, but at the time there was also hesitancy to claim unemployment benefits because it could count against the visa application. In fact, when I started mine, that was a question that was there and eventually was stricken. So like by the time I actually applied, that wasn't a question anymore because I had been on Medicaid for a little while and I had to report that and then that was taken out. But like there was even that like, can I even claim unemployment? It's gonna jeopardize my status and I also cannot take any other gigs. So that was like a very tense situation. And for students who were on optical practical training, you cannot be unemployed for longer than I believe 60 days. Don't take that as a fact. I just trying to remember. So yeah, it was like a specifically very tense moment. Just to uplift what you said about Chessie's Lighting Foundation, that was an initiative that sort of sought to alleviate that situation by providing a grant to people who couldn't apply for unemployment. So that was a wonderful initiative. And I believe the Movement Theater Company also did an initiative providing grants for designers specifically, which, as I said earlier, designers were in this even trickier situation of like, what do I design in a stageless world? Jeton, we haven't gotten to you yet, so why don't you share a little bit about your trajectory?
Well, I just don't know where to begin, but I mean, I have definitely completely different experience with those that my colleagues shared now. I was writing plays and I'm still doing that, and they were, being staged here and there within Europe, and at some points they started to get staged in USA as well. I came there a couple of times, and the process was usual, process of applying for visa at one of the US embassies. So I would get, I think in the beginning I was getting 6-month visa, and then 2 years, and eventually the next one was 3 years or something like this. But I would always get this visitor, so I don't even know what kind of visa I was getting to attend, either a stage reading or some workshops or some panel discussions. But let's say 2 years ago, when we visited New York with one of our productions that was produced here in Kosovo at La Mama Theater, the process of getting visa became, or was, a little bit more difficult and more expensive. So in total, we had to pay nearly $8,000 to cover the visa for everybody. So one part was covering visa for the performers, and the other part was covering visas for the technicians. And I mean, yeah, this happened. And now when I got this information about the application and the award, I thought, okay, I mean, this is a good opportunity. At least I could eventually benefit from this award if I get it. And I was, yeah, of course, lucky to be one of them. So I'm living in Kosovo. I'm not there. I'm not totally involved in the, so to say, American theater. But of course, my wish is that I have more productions there, and it seems that this is going to happen in the future, and that I'll be able to travel freely without having to get through those administrative procedures of getting visa, US visa. And at the moment, I'm still waiting if this visa will be approved. But I have to admit that somebody from La Mama forwarded me this call for the award, and then I feel then I got the notification, and then I was a little bit suspicious because I had no idea what it means. And I thought it must be some sort of spam, hello, we are from the firm, David and Harris, and you got 1 million, whatever. And I had to ask my US agent, so is this real? Is this something that will help me? And then she was like confirming. And but I was really impressed, and I'm still impressed by the work that has been done in, I'm of course playwright, but chaotic. I didn't make any record of my work and taking details of productions or quotes or medias. So I was submitting very chaotic information to them, and I was expecting to get some kind of chaotic paper. But then I was really impressed to see that they are very, serious, very professional. And then the paper that they kind of put it together was excellent. And I thought, okay. So this is not just some kind of, let's do this thing for the sake of doing it, but it's really professional work. So now, we are in this situation of pandemic, and normally I'm supposed to come to New York this August. I do have another type of visa, and I don't know which type, but it should be one of those that allows ordinary visitors to enter USA. But normally, if this visa gets approved, the production with La Mama is ongoing, and hopefully more work will be more places of mine will be produced in USA, and that's somehow hoping that this type of visa will serve me.
Right. Well, we're putting good vibes into the air. That it will come through in time. I just want to echo, you said Dyer Harris are a lovely firm who also handled my visa case last time, and they really do amazing work of making our weirdly printed PDFs turn into this wonderful case that makes us look amazing, makes us look extraordinary. And I do want to go back to that point that Cha made, because I do feel like it is such a, I don't want to use a curse word, it is such a mind meld to be under this expectation of exceeding extraordinarily in a field, because as immigrants, we already face a system in the United States that is designed to keep us out. You sort of like, I remember even from the first time I ever went to a US consulate to apply for a visa, I was surprised at the resistance of the place, where I was being asked questions that were clearly designed to eliminate me. And what I was doing was like jumping through that one and see if I could get to the next one, because they were looking for reasons not to allow me to come to the country. And so you go armed with all the arguments that will allow you to stay. And even while you're here, there's rules in place that are designed to make it very limited and contained to a specific experience, and not, I remember being in New York the first few times, it seemed crazy to me that I could live here, because the way that I had gotten here was paved by all these restrictions and limitations. You are sort of, like I said, even in an unemployment thing, you don't have the liberties that other people would have to say, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to apply for unemployment. It is very limiting. But I found that besides that we have to be extraordinary in spite of those limitations. There are ways in which the industry itself replicates some of that, which is bonkers, but it happens. And one of the ones that I bring up the most, because it is one that insists me and like leads me to write very strongly worded emails to people, are a lot of opportunities that are restricted to US citizens or permanent residents. And it happens all the time. It happens more than it should in awards and fellowships, and where and I'm always compelled to email and say, why are you doing this in this way? And the answers that I get are always very varied, from like, because we wouldn't be able to pay you. And I'm like, that is incorrect. My visa allows me to be paid. To others that are, Well, because we want to make sure you stay here for the duration of the award. And I'm like, that's tricky territory that you wouldn't put other people through. Like, to give a very clear example, a woman who could get pregnant would probably not be subjected to this, but if she did get pregnant, she would be able to at some point continue this. And like, for some reason, immigration is like, no, but that one is okay. If your visa for some reason goes away, we don't want to stick with you. That's a bananas thing. So I wanted to ask you guys, what are ways that you've encountered that resistance that goes beyond the legal and ends up being sort of a system problem that's not really part of the immigration law, but it's the way that the industry is also creating these extra hoops? Go for it.
Similarly, there's one, it's probably like, I'm not gonna name it, but whatever. It's like the most well-known lighting mentorship in New York City. And I remember as soon as I moved, every single designer I met were like, wow, you would be perfect for this, la, 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 la. You can't, I can't, it's for citizens only. And then another apprenticeship, you know, like I submitted, got the interview, blah, blah. And then once we were talking in the interview, it wasn't a thing of like, what are you like? What is your work? What have you done? It was, do you have health insurance? And can you afford to live in New York City with what we would be paying you? That was the interview. And it's like, okay, great. And then another, once you like, actually, I've had this twice, where someone will hire me, everything's perfect, I filled out the paperwork, and then when it comes time to pay me, they're like, oh, we didn't realize you're on a visa. It's like, what do you mean? Like, I've done the work, I've done the paperwork, you have everything you need from me, what do you mean? And then it takes like months to get paid, and it's like, you wouldn't do this to a person who's just from there.
Yeah, it's particularly when it comes to, I find that there's this sort of thing that happens to me, at least when I'm up for opportunities, where you start getting this fear that you're the candidate with the problem. And for a while, I was even shy about sharing. Yeah, I wanted to keep the immigration stuff a secret until the last possible moment. And in later years, I started getting so tired that it changed, and I started being very upfront about it. It's like one of the first things I say, sort of be like, is this gonna be a problem? But it is true that it's sort of like you live with this sort of thing of like, when is this gonna come back to bite me? Again, I don't want to curse. Who else has any experiences or moments where it felt like the immigration status was coming as a barrier?
I don't know if that experience I had would be necessarily about like how the system is put together, but or if that was kind of like an individual case. But I don't know who's listening, but people might not know that there are a number of letters that we have to get in order to apply to the O1 visa: letters of recommendation and letters of intent. And these letters are normally from industry professionals and whatnot. And there was one person who I was talking with because I needed a signature from them. And they started questioning me applying to an O1 visa. And they were telling me that this visa, they were telling me that they Googled this visa and this visa is for extraordinary people. And they were telling me that, no offense, but you're not extraordinary. Like, why are you even applying to this visa? And why are you asking me to sign this letter for you? And I was trying to explain to them that this is pretty much my only chance in getting, and like the conversation just went, like from one direction to me trying to explain to that person that this is like this is what I need. Like I work in theater, I work in freelance, I cannot apply to a work visa because a work visa is tied to an employer. And like it, but it also went in the direction of me defending my like me defending like needing to apply to that visa to that person so that they would sign a letter for me. And I think that was like one of the moments when I was like, I really did not see that coming. I really did not expect to have to explain to prove to someone that I deserve to apply to this visa. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You're going to sign this letter, I'm going to apply, and I'm going to get a rejection. But yeah, I don't know. But
I will argue that that is systemic, because I think the larger issue for me is the amount of comfort that a lot of people experience here to speak to issues that they do not understand. There was a big theater, which I'm also not going to name, in New York City, who put together this like incredible list of resources for people during the pandemic. And one of the things it said was that if you're an artist on an O1 visa, you cannot get the stimulus payments. And I was like, that is incorrect information. Like, just off the bat, I know that to not be the case. And I emailed them and I was like, hey, what's up with that? And they were like, oh, sorry, yeah, we changed it. I was like, but you were comfortable putting it out there. That why didn't you like ask someone, or what makes you think that you know what you're talking about? There should be a curiosity in terms of like, and I guess the example that you're bringing up is like, no, I've talked to my lawyers who are the experts. They are telling me this. I don't necessarily need other people to weigh in on this. But I do find that there's this like readiness to assume information, and not that it can sometimes drive me insane. So I do feel you on that level. Anyone else want to share, or we can
Yeah, I
move on?
totally agree. I feel like it's hard to work in an industry when not all, but most of the theater companies are not knowledgeable of what visa types are they, especially in theater, where a lot of us are doing a lot of work from different countries. I feel like New York should be the melting pot of all the international people, and yet, oh my god, what is a one visa? What is that like? I've had experiences where it's the same, they don't know how to navigate around the paperwork. But then I'm like, but I've done all the work. It's literally what Alexandra was saying earlier. And also, I think during the pandemic, I've thought about a lot of things, because I'm like, why are we so poor? Like, why am I on the poverty line? And then you would start to think about all of the public charges. Well, I couldn't apply for food stamps. I couldn't do the NYC lottery for rent. I cannot do this. I cannot do that. And so I think, it all boils down from the past. There's like Chinese Exclusion Act, the Japanese internment camp. It's all designed in such a way that are we, you would question, are we really welcome here? But why are things designed in such a way that make it really hard for us? And that's one route. And the second route is pay equity. I think it's so important that we just need to acknowledge the fact that as designers, we should be able to receive more money from the designs. Like, it's hard for me to accept projects that is like worth, I don't know, like $500, or like, because the amount of work alone, it's already like worth of a month of like research of like doing all of these things. At least for lighting designer, there's software, there's we acknowledged earlier high speed internet, that costs money too. And then it's one of those things where I feel like I would never want to do Sea Lighting Foundation again, because if I do it, that means we have a problem. We have a big problem. During the pandemic, we were in trouble. We were like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? It's like, and if it continues, at least for Sea Lighting Foundation giving grants, there's a problem. Like, why is no one helping? Like, why is I mean, I'm thankful for Playwrights Realm, because this is a theater company that listens and acknowledges that, oh yeah, no one's doing this. Like, and yeah, I think that's one. What I'm saying is just I'm just agreeing to everything that has been said.
Yeah.
And I think that moving forward, especially after the pandemic, we can unite and just be a community that sticks with one another, and acknowledge that we need to get paid more. We need to to compensate for the time that we invest in our work. So then another, God knows what happens next, but at least we have a cushion, you know, because in that cushion are all of these rent, food. For O1 visa, oh, after 3 years, I need to save up for a lawyer. I need to save up for this. I need to save up for this. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that you're making a good point. Danilo and I met the other day,
Oh.
and we were talking about this, which is like there's an intersection of the discussions of immigration and equity, diversity, and inclusion that doesn't happen. It has been my personal experience. I will say I can't speak for every discussion that's going on out there, but and by the way, I think it's also important to say I acknowledge that I am white. I am in a student in an artist visa. There are many ways in which I am privileged, and I'm grateful for that. I mean, God, of all the immigration experiences, mine is like one of the best. You know what I mean? Considering what other people go through to get to this country, but we do not talk about American citizenship as a way of privilege in any of those discussions, and that to me is bananas because I didn't grow up with the option of not having the United States in my life. That's just not something that happened. I grew up surrounded by American culture in a country that was very much dependent on the United States for its economy, and in which the United States had interfered politically more than once. So this crazy idea that America first is an okay attitude to take and that it's not necessarily something that should be discussed, to me, just like, I do not understand it. Danilo, do you remember anything else we said?
Yes, I literally was about to jump in on what Cha was saying because exactly because of this conversation is something that has been on my mind since we talked about it. It's specifically like this, like the immigrant artists are not talked about. And there's like this, okay, and I faced this a couple of times of like, oh, you're not happy. Well, there's always your country to go back to, which is, you know, like, first of all, very triggering. And second of all, it's just like, well, that might be actually, anyway, it's a lot of things because just what I wanted to say is that like the position of you deciding to be an immigrant as an adult, it eventually becomes a very vulnerable position, right? Because, you know, like there's a high price that we have to pay. We leave our family behind. We leave loved ones behind. We leave sometimes a career that you built behind. And like, because you believe or you have faith that your work here can have a bigger impact or the impact that you desire that your work has in the world, right? So there's a really high price that you pay. And sometimes it's just like, and this is my case, and I think it's a lot of people's case that you're just like, oh, is it worth it? Is the price that I'm paying in my heart, in my soul, worth it? Because it's like, it's my decision and mine only. So it is so deeply important when we have a support system. And I know Cha was like, I don't want to do this anymore, but like the Sea Lighting Foundation was just like such a beam of light on that horrible time that we were all going through. So like, first of all, thank you for that. You know, like you and Kimi and Rodrigo, it was just like, and also like this very award is something just like, oh, okay, yeah. And then you're just like how important it is, like financially, but also just like, oh my God, I'm seen and I'm supported and I have a space and I have a home and I have somewhere to go to and I have people to call when I need help, you know, because that's the thing, like you know, like even when like, okay, who is your emergency contact? This is just like, you know, it's complex, like it's a complex thing that like appearing on the minimal things. And this is also like a belief that I have in my heart. It's like, for example, when we say that painting is the art of colors, right? Like dance is the art of movement, music is the art of sounds. For me, theater is the art of community. And I think this is what it's important to me. And this is what like these initiatives to support immigrant artists are so important because they're so interconnected to the art that we do. We have to be together. We have to be present and sharing space. And this is just community. This is what community is to me. And you are like very correct when you say that like it's, we don't see sometimes like our position in the conversation is just like, oh, you're international, so let's not talk about you. And also like all the differences between like being an immigrant or being international, which is also different. So yeah, that's what I have to say about it.
I hear you, and I want to uplift those initiatives, including ours. There is a little, there's something that's a little dispiriting to me in realizing that a lot of those initiatives happen in places that have immigrants in them. And that's not a bad thing in itself. It's just that we are the ones, you know what I mean? Like literally the Players Realm did the International Theatermakers Award, in part because Roberta and I are immigrants. So and then there's someone inside the institution who understands that and wants to come in to help. That's not always the case. Dyer Harris, for example, is a great example of people who really just made themselves available to help in whatever way they could. But I do still yearn sometimes for the curiosity or the generosity of institutions that don't necessarily have a connection to the matter, but are like, hey, I do want to help out with this. I love those things that are being done, and if anyone else wants to sort of name an initiative or festival or award that's meant for us or that's helping us, I think that's lovely. But I do still feel that gap of even like interest, even like showing up. Like we did a panel at DCG, and there weren't as many leaders as I wish they were. And I was like, that's something that I feel like you guys should be hearing.
Yeah, I want to just because it created a space, Rattlestick has a Global Forums Theater Festival that is for immigrant and international artists. We had our second edition, and exactly as you said, like Rattlestick. So ULU, the managing director, and Kaz, our director of development, also immigrants. I'm immigrant now, our production manager. Rodrigo is also immigrant. So I think it is exactly what you said, but also if it is what it is, we have to get to, to protect each other and to give each other opportunities, and, so.
Absolutely. And that's something that I think, well, I'm going to speak from how I have for me, but I think most of us do, which is once you make it through, you do look back and are like, hey, is there any way, I love having those conversations with people who are looking to do the process themselves. And I think that's, also part of the way we sort of create that community when we help each other. Alex, did you raise your hand?
Maybe. I want to sort of name a couple groups as well. I'm with the Wingspace mentorship program right now. And I think Wingspace is theatrical design group. So it's like a group of designers. I think there's a few immigrants like within the group, but not within the mentorship. Two of us are immigrants, but none of the mentors are. But even so, they really let us just like open up. And like once we opened up about like what we were going through, everyone just jumped on board and like did their research. I know that a lot of them like donated a lot, and like then I think they hosted Sea Lion Foundation for their salons, and just like feeling that like, okay, someone cares was so important. And then with Dyer Harris, I've had other lawyers and I had talked to other lawyers before, and it always felt like I was trying to prove myself to them. But with April and Kevin, like I've talked to both of them, they were just both so complimentary. I just remember feeling like, wow, like I'm not having to prove myself to my lawyer. Like that was incredible to me, because really the first time I was like, am I even qualified? Because my lawyer didn't believe me. and then
that can happen, right? Like you can have lawyers who refuse to take your case because, and that happened to me. I had my first lawyer were like, no, you haven't been produced. And that was the end of the road. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, my first lawyer had me write my bio, and then she was, okay, this is great. Now write it like you're Donald Trump. And that was like the tone. I swear, this is 2017. And she was like, this is how you need to approach this visa. And it was like just this whole mind meld, like you said, Francisco. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say.
Jeton, I have a question for you, because you mentioned working with La Mama. So I'm also want to uplift that. How did that experience happen for you? How did you guys find each other?
Well, I mean, since the the beginning, they've been active in international cooperation. So they used to work in the Balkans from, I think, early 70s. But recently, after the war in Kosovo, they came here to do some workshops, and this is how we kind of met, and we started to discuss. 3 years ago now, they wanted to invite one of our productions, 55 Shades of Gay, that was then shown there at their theater for like 9 times in a row, and this kind of got some attention, and I could say it was a little success there. And we decided we are going to continue this cooperation. So we are doing that now in another level. So we are co-producing a play, basically a play called Bordel Balkan, that I've written a couple of years ago. And of course, they are very experienced in this issues of visas, because they've been working with international companies and with immigrant artists there. So they are, I would say, very, very experienced. But I mean, what Danilo was saying before, it is fascinating. I mean, I'm in this common situation of not being an immigrant artist. I'm living here, but my ideal way of projecting myself as a playwright is that I should be able to come to the USA freely and, you know, do my work as a playwright and come back, and then eventually bring my company there, do some kind of co-production with those that are interested. And I realize this is an obstacle. It can be an obstacle. You know, this obtaining visa sometimes is really it is exhausting process, and especially if you have to perform there. Now I remember that every time I was applying for visa, they would ask me, are you going to earn any money? Are you going to, you know, benefit there? And until recently it was no. I mean, those were just attending my plays as a guest playwright, or watching the premieres, or attending some stage readings. But as I explained 3 years ago, we had to pay this huge amount of money, and that's why I think it's important that this type of work is supported by organizations like, in this case, Playwrights Realm. So it helps international artists, individuals, to be able to freely produce their work. I mean, I realize that other colleagues are in different positions because they are living there, and they are considered as immigrant artists there. But in my case, I mean, I might eventually move there, but it's not my immediate intention. I mean, my intention is that I should be able to, if there is a possibility, I should be able to come there and work freely. So that it, you know, that's the thing. And with Liamam, I think they are one of the fascinating companies that is, you know, beyond the fact that they are only producing, they are also helping international artists from different countries to get some kind of recognition in the USA.
Right. Yeah, I know the LARC has also an exchange program with Mexico and Russia, and there are some companies that actively go out to sort of see what's happening in the world. Thank you, Jeton. And inspired by what you just said, I want to start bringing us to a conclusion with a thought, which is, if you had one change that you could see affected, what would it be that would make your life as an international artist easier in the American theater? And I just want to name that one of those changes has already happened, which is that Actors Equity no longer requires people to be citizens or permanent residents in order to be part of it, which is crazy, and I didn't even know that was the case, because I'm not an actor, but it changed literally a couple of weeks ago. So, let's meditate on that. That's a victory that should not have happened a couple of weeks ago. So if there was one thing that you could change about the American theater that would make your life easier as an international artist, what would it be? And I open the floor to whoever wants to go first.
I feel like education, like everyone should know what we have to go through to be there and to work with them, because we're working with them. So it's like, shouldn't you know what's happening or like how to deal with this? I think education is a big one, and also pay, obviously, is not enough.
For me, enough of the divide, instead ignite curiosity. Like, if we we have different accents, it's fine, because we're all from different countries, and you should actually be curious of what my culture is. Enough of this divide that we're all different, because we're all different, but at the same time, if we're doing a show together, we're collaborators, and each unique quality each extraordinary alien can offer something for the group. And so I don't know, it comes from me being a lighting designer in New York. I'm just, I feel like enough of the divide. Like, if I'm working with white electricians, that is fine. If I'm, it's like, how do I even say this, but I hope you know where I'm coming from, in terms of like me being steamrolled, being bullied, being not listened to because I'm a female Asian and I'm not that tall, and I hope that ideology is just gone, and we can just work together towards a better show, for our immigration here, towards a better immigration system. If we just be a community, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That's it.
If I can add to that, I think I would say two things. First is recently, during the pandemic, there has been a lot of conversations about artists of color in the US, and there are venues and production companies and whatnot who are trying to be active about being inclusive of diversity. However, I feel like there have been a lot of instances when production companies or theater companies are this is just like a box that they need to check. And I will say that I think twice I received emails saying, hey, we got your email address. Hey, Omar, we got your email address from like a contact list of immigrant artists. We have a job for a sound designer, and then another email that said like a wardrobe person. And both times I was like, thank you very much for reaching out. I'm actually a lighting designer. I'm neither a sound designer nor a costume person. But in the like the very brief conversation, it just seemed like they're just like reaching out to immigrant artists without necessarily looking at their work, without necessarily looking at their like at whether they would be interested in hiring them or not. There was once when a theater emailed me saying, would you be interested in being on our list of lighting designers? And I said, yes, of course, thank you. And I tried to follow up with questions, and they just didn't respond. They never responded to me. It just seemed like they needed a list of names to have to check a box. So like I want to be positive and take a look at the half full part of the glass, and say, yeah, it's great that people or theaters and venues are trying to be more inclusive. However, don't hire me just to check a box. Like at the end of the day, you are dealing with an artist, you are dealing with a human being. Hire them because you want to hire them, and yes, of course, pay attention to having a diverse group of people. But at the end of the day, the immigrant artist who you are hiring is still a creative artist, person, human, who has thoughts and feelings and whatnot. So that's my first thing. That's my first point. The first thing I would like to see change. And the second thing is, I've been to shows, to plays in the US that were created by American artists, whether they're white or artists of color, it doesn't matter, but they had roles where the part was of a non-American, and they would cast someone who doesn't even speak the language, or like has nothing necessarily to do with that. Like, and this really throws me off. It's like, if you are trying to be representative of a certain culture, do find someone who actually can represent this culture, who can speak that language, who can give you input in the rehearsals over what needs to happen.
Danilo, Jeton, any
Yeah, I think, what I would say is just like maybe addressing a system of belief that some people might have, which is different is worse necessarily, because I think many immigrant artists bring different perspectives or different artistry or different crafts, and there's some people believe that different always equates worse. And I can give an example that was really clear for this week. Like, Hollywood Reporter had an article, the 25 best acting schools of the world, and it was 22 American schools, 1 in Sydney and 3 in London. And I was like, the world? Interesting. What you imagine the world is. So like that kind of clicked me on just like a system of belief of that person that wrote this article, that everything that is not English, it's not part of the world. So I think this would be something that I would change.
Any changes? And also, we got a question. We got 2 questions actually. Do the panelists see strong differences in aesthetic norms, which I think addresses precisely what you just said, Danilo, or differences in how the work is done? And I know that production models can be very different in other countries. It's certainly the case in Argentina. So actually, Jeton, since we got to you, when bringing your plays here, have you seen any significant differences both in sort of the expectation of the audience, but also on how to put together a play?
Interesting question. Yes, in fact, I mean, when we speak of at least seeing it from our perspective, so when we speak of American theater, we kind of think that it's text-based, so they pay attention a lot to the text, and the American theater is very, so to say, realistic, and or the aesthetic is based on naturalism, while in here we are, our focus is much more in the visual aspect of it. So this is for me the biggest difference. Of course, the German theater, let's say, in here has gone much further, so in terms that the director became the author of the production. It's not anymore the playwrights, while in American theaters, on top it's still the name of the author, while the director is there, somebody who arranged, who staged that play, but still he is the author of the production. And I think that is the biggest distinction between theater that we produce here. I was also surprised, let's say, when the theater from LA was asking me, that they produced one of my productions. They asked me if they could change a couple of lines to something else, and I said, sure. It's your production, so feel free to do any kind of change that you think it's important, it's needed to help the production. And of course, in here, the directors would not ask the playwright for little changes, only if it's 50% or something like that. And personally, I don't mind, because for me, the play, it's written, it's there, and of course, somebody else will do another staging of it, will have another approach. So I don't mind if some director in the USA will, I don't know, add couple of, do some changes or cut some lines. That's completely fine. I mean, this is not a Bible or Quran that should be staged exactly as it is. So I think for me, this is the biggest difference. So it's mostly aesthetically, and the other aspect is technically. I mean, somehow theaters there are used to kind of prepare things far in advance, and they want to know exactly everything that how it should be. Well, in here we are, more flexible. We go with the flow. I mean, if things have to change until the day of the premiere, I mean, let it be. So we are not that strict in the process of that. So the creative process of producing it is much more open, so to say. And I don't know, maybe this is also not I cannot say if it's good or bad, but at least I see this is where I see the difference. I mean, I remember, I mean, this is not only Europe vice USA, it's also within European countries. I remember a couple of years ago, a German company was, somebody from a German theater was telling me, I would like to, come and learn the process you produce theater, because we are planning 2 years in advance, and then we are not able to kind of intervene if something is happening in between, which means if there is some kind of social or political crisis, they will be able to react only after 2 years. Well, in the Balkans, we don't plan things that far in advance, so we can adjust to the crisis immediately. I mean, we plan the repertory now for now, which means this month for maybe next couple of 4, 5, 6 months. And if there is some kind of social turbulences or any kind of need that theater should be addressing, then we just easily switch to that.
We are very different kinds of playwrights. I would be very upset if we changed my script. But I agree with you. I feel like it's important to encompass. I feel like recently the playwright from accepted international applications for the Scratchpad program that we do, and that was something that we wanted to keep in mind, which is like, people do theater differently in other places. I was in contact with a lot during the US-Mexico exchange, and similarly, the way theaters in Mexico doesn't always, even in the smallest things, like a play is half an hour. It's like in here, you can do it, but it's harder to like sell and to make people coalesce around something that we consider short. So yeah, I feel like more curiosity in that sense is always good to, shake it up a little bit. My thing honestly would be just feeling, I would love to feel like it's not my problem. It's like it's our problem. You know what I mean? I would love to feel like I come into an opportunity or I come into a theater and I say, hey, I'm an immigrant, so this will influence certain things. And they're like, yeah, how can we, how can we do this together? Sadly, that's not often the case, but it has been the case. It always feels very good when that is so. So before we go, I want to open up the floor for some bragging. Tell us if you want like something that's coming up that people can see. I know a lot of us already mentioned some works, so this is your moment to plug in whatever's coming up that you want people to see, because we are all extraordinary in this chat. So let people see your work. Do you have anything coming up? No? I know for a fact that things are coming up.
This is not a spam.
Go for it.
Everyone watching here, if you can get your tickets now for What to Send Up When It Goes Down, we're running. Right, we're in previews right now, so just a little sharing, because my visa got expired June 8th, and then I needed to be in tech June 12th. So good thing that I got approved. But that 4 days is like
tension.
Like tension, because how am I gonna do the show at BAM? So I was able to do it. Thank God. Thank you, Dyer Harris. Seriously. Yeah, and What to Stand Up When It Goes Down, play by Alicia Harris, directed by Whitney White. And another show that's coming up is Exception to the Rule by Dave Harris, and the director is Miranda Heyman at Roundabout Theater Company. Get your tickets now.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
I've seen What to Stand Up and can personally say it's a wonderful place, so everyone should go see it. What else? Anyone else has work coming up that people can see, either in person or online?
Yeah, I mentioned, Jeton, you wanna go? So I have a play coming up at Rattlestick. We have previews August 14th. It's called Ni Mi Madre. It's by Arturo Luis Soria. And it's a wonderful, wonderful play. Arturo is just so fabulous in it. And it's a play about his mother, a Brazilian immigrant, raising kids, trying to survive in the United States. And yeah, this is my main thing coming up.
Lovely, thank you. Jeton, you were going to say? You unmuted and then muted yourself again. There you go.
Sorry for that. I mean, as I explained, we are at the moment working this production called Balkan Bordello that we are co-producing with La Mama in New York. The first phase will begin now in August, and the premiere should be on 3rd of November in Pristina, Kosovo, in the frame of this Kosovo theater showcase that we organize here. So you're all invited if you're around, if you can move from USA. And then we'll bring the production to La Mama in after that. So which means dates are not set yet, but it should be November, December, or eventually spring 2022. So Balkan Bordello is a play which is based on this Aeschylus tragedy of Orestia, and so it will include American and Balkan actors.
Amazing. Thank you, Jeton. Omar, Alexandra, any work that people can see?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in LA starting October, the museum that I work for will be open to the public. It's well, they don't need my very modest advertisement, but it's the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, so they are very well established. Yeah. So if you're in LA, check them out, and a big shout out to them. They helped me quite a lot with my visa. And also I am doing a couple shows with Heidi Duckler, who is a choreographer. I do not have the dates on me, but it's on her website. Check out her work. She has a lot of work in LA. It's all site specific, so it's all outdoors most of the time. And you know, with the pandemic and whatnot, it's super safe. So yeah.
Wonderful. Alex?
So right now I'm being a PM for 6 months, so it's not design, but it'll open in BAM in November. It's called The Mood Room. It's big dance theater. It'll be really good. It's based on a play called The Five Sisters, which is based on a play called The Three Sisters by Chekhov. So that's my next, because since I didn't know when I was coming back, I've been stepping away, but I'll have more when I get back.
So a BAM, you said?
Yeah, Fishman.
Two BAM things. Great, amazing. I am gonna brag in the name of the Playtron and say we have just opened applications for the second round of the International Theatermakers Award. So apply, and if you're not international, find an international person, send them the link and ask them to apply, because we want to keep doing this and we want to keep helping. So don't miss it out. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat, which has all the information that you need to share. Wait, I shared it with Alexandra. I'm an old person. Now I'm sharing it with everyone. There you go. This is the link. Send it to everyone and ask everyone to apply, because we're very excited about it and we want to get a lot of applications from all over the world. This has been lovely, and I want to thank you all forward to doing that. And all of you who are in New York, let's get together. The world is opening. I am vaccinated. I'm ready. And if everyone's going to Kosovo or El Salvador, we know where to go. So thank you everyone for participating. There will be a survey after this. Once you close, we ask you to answer it because we're still doing a lot of programming and we love to hear from our audiences. And yeah, that's it for today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Playwrights Realm. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Dyer Harris.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
again.